On today's show, Media Day for the Cavs is 2 weeks from today. I've got 3 questions that I think will define what this season is like for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'll tell you what those are and how I think they'll be answered on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I just want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to be a friend and give us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. And of course, tell somebody else about the show. Make sure that they're subscribed. And of course, make sure you're subscribed as well. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content from us here. Of course, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In today's episode, brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet just $5. And if that first $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. 2 weeks from today, the Cleveland Cavaliers will be holding Media Day at Rocket Arena. Later that day, they will be flying down to Bradenton, Florida, to IMG Academy, where training camp will begin. Obviously, this means the season is very, very close. We are inching closer day by day from the Cleveland Cavaliers playing a regular season basketball game. And even before that, of course, we will have preseason basketball. Now, there are questions that I have not only about this team, but about the things that surround them that I think will define what this season is, and more specifically, the regular season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, some of this will bleed over into the postseason, but this is more of a things that will define how this regular season goes, which in turn will have, I believe, a big impact on what the postseason looks like. Now, there are 3 questions that I am very, very interested in. And the first question that I think is fascinating, that will go a long way towards defining what this season is like for the Cavaliers. What type of step forward does Evan Mobley take? Last year, Evan took a gigantic step, at least in my opinion, on the offensive end of the floor. Now, we know what he is defensively. He has an incredibly high floor on the defensive side of things. He was the defensive player of the year, and I don't know if we should expect him to repeat as far as that goes, but his defensive floor is being an all-defense guy if he's healthy. He has that sort of impact on defense. He's one of the best defensive players in basketball. That much really not up for discussion, not up for debate. I think that is a pretty consensus opinion on Evan. Now, what he changed offensively, I thought from the very get-go last year, he was a more aggressive offensive player. We all expected his 3-point shot from the jump last season to be improved, and it was. He just wasn't taking them very frequently. And then he had that day in Charlotte in early December where he hit 6 3-pointers, and things seemed to change from there on out, and he became a much higher volume 3-point shooter. Now, what should we expect this year? Because Evan is still at an age where he's getting better. We have not seen the best of Evan Mobley. I don't think, truthfully, we've seen anything close to the best of Evan Mobley. I think that he has 3, 4, maybe even 5 levels yet where he can ascend up, particularly, again, on the offensive end of the floor, just because of how good defensively he's been throughout his entire career. Now, what are we looking for offensively from Evan this year? Because I do think it starts with being more aggressive again. And I think that he can be more aggressive offensively this year than he was last year. And he was, as you know, more aggressive last year than he was the year prior. But I think as he grows, as he gets better, as he improves his game, I think also his confidence goes up. I think that he is a more confident basketball player by a wide margin than when he first entered the league. And I don't know that he was ever tentative. I don't know if that'd be a fair way to describe Evan offensively. but he has become much more aggressive. If you think back to the start of last year, and I think this is a fun game to go back and rewatch, but there was the game against the Toronto Raptors. It was opening night. It was in Toronto. And Evan didn't have that 3-point shot that we all expected him to have, but he got the ball and just went to the basket. And he was extremely aggressive. And it appeared as if Evan just wanted to go out there and he wanted to prove a point. He wanted to show the type of work that he put in the offseason. He wanted to show off that his offensive game had improved. Now, that aggressiveness, I think if you want to poke a hole in his offensive game, I don't think that aggressiveness was as consistent as it probably should have been throughout the entire year. I think that is something that you would like to see improve. Evan be a more aggressive, impactful offensive player night in and night out. And I do think that is something that comes along with maturity and growth. And as I said, he's still getting better. And I think that this year, the one area where I would like to see Evan improve the most, and this is how, maybe not completely how I'm going to judge the type of steps forward that he takes offensively, because, I mean, he could go out there and I don't expect this to happen. I don't think anyone expects this to happen. But let's say he starts taking 6 threes a game and is making 42% of them. Like, that would be a very clear, unexpected step forward on offense. And that would totally transform the type of player he is and what this Cavs offense looks like. I wouldn't expect that to happen. That's not what I would anticipate his offensive growth to look like. The area that I point to, the area that I think might be the most important for him to take that step forward, is actually going downhill towards the basket. And as I say that, I think of it as Evan has become, in my opinion, and I have not looked at these numbers, but I do think that he's become a better player when he's got the ball at the elbow and he can just go score. I think he does that better than when he first got into the league. And of course, the floor looks different now than it did then, because the roster for the Cavs is much different and there's more space, and that's part of it. But I think a bigger part of it is Evan is just better at that. But in watching him do that stuff, I do think at too many times last year and years before, I think it's taken Evan 1 or 2 more dribbles to get to his spot than you would like to see it take. So the area really that I'm getting at is I think that Evan can become a more efficient, more productive, more aggressive handler of the basketball. And if he does that, I think that's going to create so much more for him. And I think it's going to create so much more for everybody else that's on the floor for the Cavs. Because if Evan is able to get downhill quicker, if he's able to be more efficient getting to his spots, whether that's the block, whether that's getting to the mid post, whether that's getting all the way to the rim and finishing aggressively, which is something that I do think he did much better last year. And I would anticipate he does better this year than he did last year. But if his handle is tighter than it has been in years past, I think that is something that unlocks all of that. And I do think with Evan, since he's come into the league, he's been a very good passer. Now, I don't believe that he is a top tier passer in basketball. I mean, nobody's going to confuse him in this aspect with like Nikola Jokic, right? Or Alperen Şengün even, but he's a good passer for a big man. I think if he tightens his handle and becomes a more efficient dribbler and better at attacking the basket downhill on his own, being able to go get his own buckets, I think you're going to see that assist number start to climb up a little bit. I think you're going to see him be able to be better in terms of getting the basketball to others in positions to score. And I think a lot of his passing that has been good has been stuff that has kind of come in the flow of the offense. And I don't know that it's necessarily been something to where he is passing to guys that are immediately in a position to score. Because if you look at his assist numbers, like last year, he was a bigger focal point offensively for the Cavs than he had been in any of his first 3 seasons. And that showed primarily in his points per game. But it's not as if his assist number made a big jump from 2 years ago to last year. In fact, it stayed the same. He averaged 3.2 assists both in 2023, 2024, and 2024, 2025. That was a number that I thought would go up. I thought we would see Evan dish out a little bit more this last season. I think part of that is because he has not been a big enough threat creating for himself that when that comes, when he becomes a bigger threat to create for Evan Mobley will then become a bigger threat to create for others. And that is one of the questions, that is maybe the most important question that will define this Cavs season. Because if Evan does that, if Evan is able to take that aspect, that specific part of his offensive game to the next level, if he is able to do those things effectively, that's going to mean really, really good things for the Cavs. That's going to mean great stuff for Donovan Mitchell. That's going to mean great stuff for Darius Garland. That might mean really good things for Jared Allen. I don't know what this is going to look like with 2 bigs on the floor versus 1 big on the floor. That's another question that's probably a topic for a different show, but I would like to discuss. But that's going to mean great things for the Cavs, because if Evan takes that step forward offensively, he is going to ascend from somebody that, as we did our NBA top 100 last week, and Evan Mobley, as you can see on your screen, if you're watching on YouTube right now, came in at number 16. If he does this well, if he's able to do that sort of thing, I think that is the path for him to rise up that ranking. That is the path for him to become the best player on the Cavs. Now, he has to be stronger, and that is the thing that, because I don't know how much we're going to learn at Media Day 2 weeks from now, but it's the first glimpse that we will have in person of Evan Mobley since the Cavs lost in the postseason, what he looks like physically. Because last year, when Media Day happened and we all convened, Evan looks like he had put on weight. Like, he looked like a guy that was bigger and stronger than the year before. If he noticeably looks bigger this year, I think that's going to be a really, really good sign for things to come, not only in this specific aspect, but in a lot of different ways for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, I've got a question about Darius Garland, and it's a very important one. I'll tell you what it is, and we'll dive into it next right here on Locked on Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season, it's here. We had a great slate of games, unless you're a Browns fan, because that did not go very well on Sunday, but we had a great slate of games on Sunday. Kansas City, Philly was awesome. Indianapolis, Denver was awesome. There were a lot of really good games. There are, I believe, 2 games tonight. Maybe if you want, you could head on over to FanDuel and get in on the action, because FanDuel is, of course, America's #1 sports book. And when there are Monday Night Football games, as there are 2 of them tonight, you've got Tampa Bay taking on Houston, and you've got the LA Chargers taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. It means opportunities for you to win. Tampa Bay on the road, getting 2.5 points against the Houston Texans. You know, I'm not a big believer in Houston right now. I'm not a crazy believer in Tampa. I do think they really got away with one against Atlanta in week 1. The Falcons should have won that game, and they didn't. But I really didn't like what I saw from Houston either. So I think I'm going to go Tampa plus 2.5, which is the line as I record this Sunday night. And then the other game, I don't think the Raiders are very good. I just don't. I'm sorry, but I don't believe in them. So I'm going to take the Chargers as a 3-point favorite on the road, and I'm going to parlay those 2 things together and get it at plus 257 odds. So I could potentially make some serious money right there. But if you're new to FanDuel, the thing that you can do that I can't do, because I'm not new to FanDuel, is you can bet just $5. And if that first $5 bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. That sounds like a great deal, because it is a great deal. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com, or the FanDuel app in whatever app store you need. But FanDuel.com, the FanDuel Sportsbook app, place your first $5 bet, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you again for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're ready, because Cavs season is right around the corner. Question number 2 that I think will go a long way in defining the season for the Cleveland Cavaliers is, how does Darius Garland recover from his offseason toe surgery? Now, I don't know if Darius is going to be available opening night. I don't think that necessarily matters a whole ton. Like, if Darius Garland plays opening night, that's great. if Darius Garland doesn't play opening night, that's fine too. I don't think that sort of thing has an impact on what Darius Garland is going to like, what the expectations should be for him or for the Cavs. That doesn't change anything. But what does interest me is who Darius Garland has been in his career after injuries. Because you go back to him in the 2023-2024 season, and what happened? Darius Garland had that fractured jaw that I believe it was December 14th against the Boston Celtics was when he hurt his jaw. And Garland was having an okay season prior to that. I don't think Garland was having a great season. He had missed time early in the year because of another injury that kept him out, but he was averaging 20 points a game before that, shooting. He was shooting 34% from three, 47%. Like, he was not having, in my opinion, a great season before that. And then he misses a bunch of time because of the injury, the jaw injury, and he comes back and he plays the rest of the season, but he never looked like Darius Garland at that point. He averaged 16 points a game. From beyond the arc, he shot 38%, which is a little lower than you expect Darius Garland to shoot, but he only shot 43% from the floor, and he really struggled around the basket. He never fully, and a big part of that is the weight that he lost. I know publicly it's been talked about, he lost like 12 pounds, and I believe it was closer to 20 from what I've gathered about that. And that's a really, really difficult thing to have to deal with during the season. And like, expecting him to be awesome after that probably was a little unfair. And I don't know that anyone necessarily expected him to be awesome, but I do think expecting him to play like an all-star after dealing with a fractured jaw, not an easy thing to do. Now, let's fast forward to this past season, because Darius had a great season overall. I mean, he was an all-star. Now, he dealt with some nagging injuries at times, but he was really, really good for the first 50 plus games of the season. So through the first two games after the All-Star break, Darius averaged 21 points per game while shooting 42.5% from three-point range, which is about where you would expect a shooter the caliber of Darius Garland to be, shooting just a shade under 50% from the floor and 87% from the free throw line. So not quite a 50, 40, 90 guy, but really, really efficient, really, really good. And then he had an injury that came up against the New York Knicks the second game after the All-Star break. He missed two games against Memphis, against Orlando. This was, I believe, during the 16-game winning streak that the Cavs had. And then he came back and he played 21 games after that injury. In those 21 games, he averaged 18 points per game while shooting 34% on three, so 8% less from beyond the arc, just 42, essentially, rounding up here, 42% from the floor. And then in the postseason, obviously was dealing with a toe injury and was a shell of himself. Now, he had the toe injury, I don't believe as severe as he did during the postseason, but he was dealing with that down the stretch of the regular season too. But the point I'm getting at is when Darius Garland has had a significant injury, he has not exactly bounced back right into form right away. Having a full offseason after the jaw injury led to great basketball from Darius Garland. But then he had the injury against the New York Knicks. I believe it was a hip injury. And after that, he wasn't the same player. Now, like I said, I don't know if Darius is going to play opening night. It doesn't matter for expectations. Like, that is one game of 82, and October 22nd is so far away from a game from like when the postseason starts. The Cavs have a long time to get this going. But I do think that we probably shouldn't expect Darius Garland, when he first gets back on the floor, when he's first back in the starting lineup, to be an all-star caliber guy. And for Darius, I don't think any like personal level goals for him should be making an all-star team or making an all-NBA team. I think the goal for him needs to be that he's playing his best basketball at the right time. And the question ultimately that I have is, how long is it going to take Darius Garland to bounce back from this injury? And maybe that's unfair because this was a very significant injury. It caused him to have off-season foot surgery that jeopardizes the start of his season. That's a big deal. But I look at previous injuries that he's had, even if you want to go back to before Donovan Mitchell was here, when he was dealing with the back injury, the year the Cavs were a play-in team, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, but it took him a while to get back to form from that. And then he had a full offseason, and he was an all-star caliber guy the next year alongside Donovan Mitchell. But how long is it going to take Darius Garland to get back into form? How long is it going to take before we see Darius Garland look like an all-star again? There is no doubt that Darius Garland, to me, is that type of player. And he has the accolades to back that up. And I think he has spent the vast majority of his, I mean, if you should not include his rookie year or second year in this, but like since he has matured as a player, I think he has spent the majority of time looking like an all-star. It's just after injuries, he's not. And this is a significant injury. How long will it take him to look like an all-star again? Because the goal for him should be to look like an all-star in the postseason. That's going to be the thing that matters. He's not going to be a guy. And I think at this point, unless he takes like a massive leap forward, which I don't know is in the cards for him, unless he does that, he's no longer going to be judged on regular seasons. And Donovan Mitchell is in this boat too. Darius Garland's not going to be judged on regular season success anymore. He's going to be judged on postseason success because he's had regular season success and not postseason success. But I look at this and say, okay, can he look like an all-star after the all-star game? That, for the Cavs, is more important than anything Darius Garland can do between right now and the all-star game, I believe, on February 15th. What does that look like? How long does it take Darius to get to that? Now, as long as he gets to it, it doesn't matter. As long as he, whether it's February or maybe it's January, maybe it's March, but as long as he looks like an all-star when things matter, that's good. But the question I have is, how long until that takes place? When should we expect that to be the case? Now, the Cavs are a team that is unquestionably situated at the very top of the Eastern Conference. I think the New York Knicks are right there. Who can push them? What does the rest of the East look like? And how could that impact the Cavs this year? We'll discuss it next, right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 different bold flavors, and each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar, and more importantly, zero crashes. The crash is the worst, right? No one likes that. No one wants to be feeling great 1 minute, and then the next minute, you can't feel your legs because they're so weak. They're like almost tingling, right? You don't want that. 5 Hour Energy, not going to give you that. And one of the other great things about 5 Hour Energy is how portable it is, right? It's got big taste, but it comes in that tiny packaging, meaning you can take it anywhere and get that boost whenever you need it, which is exactly what you should want. You should want convenience. You should want the boost. You should want the taste that you get in 17 different bold flavors. You should want it all, and 5 Hour Energy provides you with all of it. So enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time right now to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold. Try something new. Give it a go. In store or online at 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5, HOUR, energy.com, or on Amazon today. Thanks again for making Locked On Cavs your first watch today and every day. You can find the show right here on YouTube. And if you are watching, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us and click subscribe so you don't miss any Locked On Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers are, in my opinion, the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. I think they have the best roster in the Eastern Conference. I think that they are the team that is going to win the most regular season games. I think they are certainly built for the regular season. And the sports books see it the same way. Since we last talked about how FanDuel views the Cavs, They have only grown as bigger favorites, which I do think is interesting in the Eastern Conference, especially considering that the Knicks signed Malcolm Brogdon over the weekend. I do like that pickup for them, but the Cavs are plus 230 favorites to win the Eastern Conference this year. The New York Knicks are plus 320. As far as winning the NBA title goes, the Cavs have the second best odds at plus 700, the Thunder plus 210. They are heavy favorites, and then the Denver Nuggets and New York Knicks are behind the Cavs. But as I look at this, it can't just be the Cavs and the Knicks. Who is that next team in the Eastern Conference? And is that next team good enough to beat the Cavs in the postseason? Because right now, I look at the group of four, and maybe Philadelphia should be in this group. I don't know. I don't know what to make of the Sixers. But I look at Orlando, I look at Atlanta, I look at Detroit, I even look at Milwaukee a little bit just because they have the guy in Giannis that is the best player in this conference by, I think, a significant margin. For as good as Donovan Mitchell is, he's just not Giannis. So I look at this and say, well, I've got questions about the Orlando Magic. I think they have a good roster, but right now, I would not pick them to beat the Cavs. I would not pick them to beat the Knicks in the postseason either. I like a lot of what Atlanta did this postseason. I think Kristaps Porzingis a great at. I like Nickeil Alexander-Walker a lot. I think they're putting a lot on Jalen Johnson's shoulders, and I do wonder how Trae Young's contractual situation could potentially impact things on the floor. But I have a lot of questions about them. Can Kristaps Porzingis stay healthy? I like Detroit. I think the Pistons are good. I don't think the Pistons are great. Maybe they take another step forward. Philadelphia is the giant question mark in Joel Embiid, whether or not are we ever going to see peak Joel Embiid play basketball ever again? I have no idea. Does Paul George still like playing basketball? I don't know these things. I think Tyrese Maxey's pretty good. And then you get to Milwaukee, and it's like, well, they have Giannis, and the rest of the roster, I think, leaves a lot to be desired. But I look at that group, and there's nobody that jumps out to me. And I find it hard to believe because just we know how these things go. I find it hard to believe that the Cavs and or the Knicks are just going to run so far away from the rest of the conference that there's no competition. I just don't see that being the case. So the question I have here is, which of these teams could it be good enough to knock the Cavs out of the postseason? Because right now, while I would pick the Knicks to beat, or I would pick the Cavs, to beat the Knicks in the postseason, it's not crazy to think the Knicks could win that series, right? The Cavs would be favored, but the Knicks could win that series. Of course they could. I look at Orlando. I don't know if the Magic could win that series. I don't know that the Hawks could win that series right now. One of those teams might get to that point where they could. But right now, I don't know that I need to see what they look like because they have made massive changes. And I think that's a very fair way to think about things. But then I get below that. I don't think there's a way Detroit gets to a point where I could see them beating a healthy Cavs team in the postseason. I don't think Philadelphia is going to ever be healthy. And I really don't think, despite how good Giannis is, I don't think the Bucks have nearly enough talent surrounding Giannis to push the Cavs or the Knicks. So I don't know what the Eastern Conference is going to look like. I don't think it's wide open. I think it is the Cavs or the Knicks, but I do think there's going to be a third team that at least makes you think. I just don't know who that team is. And the answer to that question, I think, will be a really fun subplot to watch throughout this entire Cavs regular season. It's going to be fun. It's here before we know it. As I said, Media Day is 2 weeks away from today. The first training camp practice, 2 weeks from tomorrow at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. I certainly cannot wait for Cavs basketball to be back, just the same way that I know you can't wait either for Cavs basketball to be back. So thank you, because that's going to do it for today's show. But I will be back, of course, tomorrow, because Locked On Cavs coming your way 5 days a week now until next August. I will be 5 days a week. And as you guys know that are everydayers, if the Cavs are playing, I'm talking about the game. Doesn't matter if it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm talking about every single Cavs game. So you can expect that. And we are getting very, very close. So in order to prepare, because I'm doing my prep right now, the way I need you to prepare is make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Cavs wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And if you're watching the show on YouTube as we get out of here, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I will be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.